It's time for the College of Bass with Kevin VanDam and Steve Pennaz.
Hey everybody, welcome to College of Bass. Thanks for joining us tonight. This is week 6 of the series. I can't believe we've gone that far already, and we've covered a lot of ground. If you've missed any of the previous episodes or parts of some of the other episodes, go to planofishing.com, their YouTube channel, and check it out. All of the shows are housed there, so you can review them at your leisure, and all future shows are going to be there as well. So check it out on Plano Fishing's YouTube channel. Hey, one other thing before Kevin comes on board, I want to thank everybody who's been tuning into Lake Commandos TV this year. We just moved over to the Outdoor Channel in Q1, and the viewer response is phenomenal. If you haven't checked it out, Sunday mornings, 11:30 Eastern Standard Time. It's all about pattern building, so come join us. I think you'll enjoy the show. Hey, Kevin, man, it's awesome to see you again. I bet you're looking forward to next week, heading down to Rayburn, huh?
Yeah, Rayburn is one of those legendary fisheries, place that I fished actually my first season on tour and set the 5-fish record at that event way back in the day. So it's a great lake, got a lot of history, and it's actually been in really good shape the last handful of years with the grass coming back, and it's just ton of great, big fish being caught down there. And the timing should be really good being down there, really the third week of March, prime time for the spawn.
So what did the 5-fish weigh?
In that tournament was 31.11. So wow. That was giant, at the time that was the 5-fish record. Now it's way up there. But
yeah. So what are some of the patterns you think they're going to really take off at the event next week?
Well, the biggest thing is going to be what the Mother Nature does between now and then, as far as with the rain. Rayburn's a lake that can fluctuate a lot, and literally it's been just on the slow rise. That's one thing that I do before every tournament is I start watching the weather and the water levels, just all the conditions for that area well in advance, just to try to get a general consensus of what's going on down there. So the lake's been on a real slow rise. Obviously, a few weeks ago, they had that unbelievable cold weather down there, like nothing in recorded history like it. And, but it's bounced back, temperatures are in the 70s, even some 80-degree temps this week. So, the next full moon it's going to blow up down there for sure, but it should be, those fish are wanting to be shallow this time of year. It's got hydrilla in it. And if the water comes up, it's got a lot of bushes and willows, cypress trees and things. So it's a big lake. It's got a lot of options, and it's got a lot of big fish. So it should be a really good tournament.
Besides yourself, who are some of the anglers that really do well on Rayburn traditionally?
Well, I think this one is going to be a shallow water event. If it was going to be an offshore tournament a little bit later or even a little bit earlier where it's pre-spawn, and who knows, it could be. There still could be a lot of stage and pre-spawn females out there. It's something that I always got in the back of my mind for sure. I've won there before. I won there in this time of the year in the spring on a high water year with a deep crankbait. So, the water was way high and flooded in the bushes, and everybody thought they'd be up shallow, and I caught them out deep, and it was a really good tournament. So it's something I always think about. But you think of the guys that like to frog and flip are going to be definitely real strong, but you just never know. I mean, in our group, there's so many talented anglers. It's hard to say, well, hey, who's going to be really good. But, then you look at a Todd Faircloth that's right from there. He, being a local, he knows the lake, he knows the timing. He should be right in tune to exactly what's going on.
Hey, our guest tonight, Clark Wendlandt, you guys go way back. He fished Bassmaster for a number of years early on and then went to FLW. But I bet you were excited to see him win Bassmaster Elite Angler of the Year last year. Yeah,
when Clark made the switch back to the Bassmaster Elite Series, I knew he's a seasoned veteran, super skilled angler, really versatile. And that's what we're going to talk about. I mean, and that's what he had to do last year. He had to be super consistent all season long. And, you've got to be really versatile to do that. And he's seen it all, been there and done it, fished, just about everywhere. And it didn't surprise me at all. And so really pretty early through the season, I was pulling for Clark just because, he's won multiple Angler of the Years before, on the FLW tour. And, he's a guy that knows what it takes to win Angler of the Year, and that's what it is. It's about managing your bad tournaments. You can't have a really bad tournament and win Angler of the Year anymore. You've got to have your bad tournaments be, 30th place, 25th place, things like that. And when you do have a shot to win, you got to take your shots there too. So, and Clark's really good at that. Of anybody, that's been out there and fished for as many years as he has, he knows exactly what it takes to put yourself in contention. And when you're not, then too, that, hey, let's make the most of it and just don't, burn and die.
So you've had 7 Angler of the Year titles on Bassmaster, 1 on FLW. When was the first one you won?
Oh gosh, I won Angler of the Year, I think in '92. So that's like Clark was fishing bass at that time. If I remember correctly.
I looked this up. Clark cashed his first Bassmaster check in '93 on the St. Lawrence River. You won $2,000. I remember that.
Yeah. A Texas guy going up there catching smallmouth, But that's
Hey, when Clark comes on board, we're going to talk junk fishing, and junk fishing still gets a laugh. You mentioned junk fishing in a group, and somebody's going to giggle a little bit. What is junk fishing in your definition? Well,
basically, it's being really prepared to fish whatever's right in front of you at the time and do it well. So if your main pattern is going down the bank throwing a spinner bait, burning a spinner bait, and all of a sudden you come up to a good looking dock, having a rod ready and rigged to fish that dock and pick it apart correctly based on the conditions is really important. And then from one day to the next, it may change. If you got a cloudy, windy day, you can power fish your way through, but then the next day it gets sunny. You better have a wacky worm ready, or, you better have some kind of finesse technique ready. And, that's where guys like Clark, who have a ton of experience, he's a lot better at it than me. No doubt. I'm just so hard-headed that I try to make my, style work under even tough conditions. And a lot of times, I can, and it's all about confidence too. But, just being smart and again, having everything ready and being prepared to maximize your time and your efficiency on the water is what the really, really good anglers do.
Hey, our main topic tonight is going to be Lipless Cranks. I know you're a huge fan. You've won a ton of money on Lipless Cranks. I love them as well. They've been really good to me over the years. But, I think this bait almost has sort of an image problem. Is it too easy to fish?
Well, I think a lot of people think, oh, man, all you do is cast it out and wind it in. But there is a true art to fishing a lipless bait, to truly fishing it. And, it's definitely legendary early in the spring like this. The lipless crankbait bite at Gunnersville and Sam Rayburn and Toledo Bend, these southern grass lakes. It's definitely something that everybody's, dreamed about. You read about it and things like that, but it's an all season bait. It is a very good cold water bait. Our lakes around my house the water is, I can't believe it. I went to a lake yesterday and looked, and it was 98% covered. And today it's 30% ice is all. 60% of the ice went off plus, and that was this afternoon. So, it is going out quick here. And literally on a lot of these shallower grass lakes that we have up here in the Midwest, the day that you can launch the boat, you can catch them, or I catch them with a red eye shad, on those that shallow grass lakes, and they'll get right up in nothing. It's amazing. They want to be up shallow. That radiant sunshine puts them up there real tight, and a lipless bait triggers them in that super cold water.
I'm looking forward to getting into deep with you, because I agree. There's so much more to making these baits perform. Hey, before we go any further, we need to congratulate Bob Mull, the third of Pennsylvania, for winning the Plano prize pack last week. Hey, anybody watching the show tonight is going to be eligible to win the prize pack tonight. Just like and share the program, comment, ask questions. There's some really cool stuff in there, including a couple edge boxes, some Strike King lures, Yeti Rambler, and a couple of another Play-Doh box. So please enter tonight or just get involved in the show. It'd be kind of fun. Hey, Kevin, I know you're a huge fan of the College of Bass mug from Yeti, but what makes it special? Is this thing's available for sale as well?
Yeah, the most popular size is this 20-ounce Rambler. I mean, I use mine every single day. I get up, with coffee in the morning and drink water out of it all day long. And, it keeps coffee hot and it keeps ice, cold all day. And the great thing is that Yeti and Plano have gotten together, and all the proceeds from the sales, you can get them on the Plano website. And all the proceeds, 100% goes to the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame, which is a great organization that obviously is we've got a lot of history with all of us. And I think I'm super, super proud to be inducted in it. So it's just great that they've put it there. So definitely support it. You get a great mug that you can use like that, and it's really cool. Yeah,
and mug numbers are actually running out. So order now if you want to get one before they run out.
It's a limited run that they did, and when they're gone, they're gone. We've got this week, we've got 2 more weeks of shows left, so hopefully by the end we've gone through them, and that'll raise a lot of money for the Professional Bass Fishing Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Hey, a huge event's going to start tomorrow, the Bass Pro Shop Spring Classic. If you're in the market for tackle, I mean, right now is the time to buy.
Biggest sale of the year, man. There's no doubt. It's something that we all look forward to. It's changed a little bit this year, I think, for the pros, just because of COVID and that. But the sale's still going on in the stores. You can go to Bass Pro or Cabela's.com and see all the things. There's a whole page of Plano products. So edge boxes for $14.39. That is ridiculous. I mean,
when I saw that, I was stunned. I
know it. I mean, they're very hard to find at a lot of the stores. I went to my local Cabela's this past week, and I was surprised by the selection that they had. They were low on a few. The terminal boxes been hard to get. The jig box is one of my favorites. It's been a little harder to get, but they had some of all of them. So, and again, you can either shop online or in stores, and they just have a lot of great things. There's just so many deals going on. This is the biggest fish and tackle sale of the year. And again, it's just it's a great way to kick off the season and get stocked up and save some money.
I went through the flyer today, and I was really shocked at some of the prices. I mean, so if you guys haven't checked it out, I would highly recommend it. Hey, last week, Kevin, we covered a lot of ground. We went through frog fishing. We had Jeff Gustafson on right after his first win. We had Christine Fisher on kayak fishing. We had literally hundreds of questions that came through, so we didn't get to them all. But I just wanted to ask a couple. One was from Gary Taransky. He asked, has side imaging changed the way that you fish?
Absolutely. So there's no doubt when side imaging first came out, it wasn't near as good as what we have now with mega side imaging as far as the clarity, but it still really showed things. And instead of having just a 20-degree transducer cone where you had to go back and forth and idle over it, just trying to see it and really get on top of where the fish were sitting, now we can look off to the sides. And I mean, it's very easy to cover 200 feet. And with great detail now to be able to find structure, breaks, drop-offs, weed lines, and schools of fish. So it just makes us much more efficient when we're searching for fish. And now we've got forward-facing sonar. We got Mega 360. There's Mega Live. There's Panoptics. Lowrance has her. So that's the next thing. So now we're being able to see all around the boat. It's just made us so much more efficient as anglers. And it's actually, I love, people say, man, too much technology, it's not fair to the fish. Well, you still got to make them bite. And I think that, helping anglers, and that's what I love to do. That's why we do this show, is we're trying to teach people to catch more fish, to be more successful on the water. And if you can have a better time out there on the water and be more satisfied, then man, I have done my job.
Hey, John Creek asked a question, and on the first blush, it seems like a question that's not that deep, but it is deep. Hook setting techniques. How do you set the hook? Maybe you can provide some tips on that.
Yep. So it just depends on the lures, but open hooked exposed lures like crankbaits or even a tube jig or a swim bait. One of the best ways to set the hook is actually reel set. Is just to speed up your retrieve and pull into the fish. For smallmouth especially, I do that with all my finesse techniques. A drop shot or a tube or a Ned rig. It's just reel, let the rod load, and then pull into them instead of trying to drop slack in the line and jerk. Now, if you're flipping, that's a different story. But if you're having a trouble getting hooks into a fish, maybe you should look at using braid with a fluorocarbon leader that's, it doesn't have the stretch, and it really enhances that for first timers and for kids and things like that. I love to start them with braid because it gives them the sensitivity to really feel the bite. And it also, if they've got a weak hook set or they're not quite sure, they're going to catch a lot of those fish with that braid.
And are all your hook sets overhead, or how often do you do side? I mean, talk a little bit about that side.
Yeah, like when I'm cranking, especially, I don't set the hook over my head. I'm going to pull into them sideways, and it just depends on the rod positioning of the technique that I'm using at the time. If I've got my rod tip low to begin with, I'm probably going to pull to the side. If you're flipping, I'll drop a little slack in the line, and I'm going to pop it backwards. You're always trying to, if you can, especially in close quarters, is to get an opposite angle on the fish if you can. Instead of trying to pull it straight out of his mouth, you want to get it in the corner and the side. So I want to pull the opposite direction if I can, if you're in position to do that.
Awesome. Hey, Clark Wendlandt is in. We're going to bring him in just a few seconds, but we had a couple other questions. Kai, would you bring up the next one, please? Now, the question, and one of the reasons that really intrigued me about this question is when you're looking at secondary points on a map, what makes them worth fishing? And today it's probably more important than ever because the primary fishing spots, the main lake points,
obvious stuff,
are getting crushed. So what are you looking for in terms of secondary spots?
So, nowadays the mapping is so good. I used to use a lot of paper maps, but they just are not very detailed. And so now with the mapping we have on our electronics, and it's Lakemaster HD lakes, they're to 1 foot increments. So what I'm looking for is slight irregularities, where those lines make a little irregularity that might show that there's something there with a bottom contour change, or where there's a little bit deeper water, or maybe it's a little flatter spot, anything that's different than everything around it. So if one side of the point, if it's just, the lines stay all the same distance and it's all the way around, that's not near good. But if there's something that's a little bit irregular on one side or the other, instead of on the tip, especially, that's a likely looking spot. And again, usually when you see a variation and where the width of those lines either comes a little closer or a little farther together, there's going to be a bottom composition change. It's going to be a hard spot, or there's going to be, a change where maybe there's a patch of gravel next to some rock. In a place like Table Rock, we see that all the time, in these highland reservoirs. So just a subtle irregularity, because the mapping is so good now. I mean, they actually scan all these coves, and
yes.
and it is to a T. So it's showing those little irregularities for a reason. And like I say, it's usually something different on the hardness of the bottom, and it's going to attract fish.
That's awesome. We had one other question from Kyle. He had a question if we're going to actually launch College of Walleye, and I love the idea, but we've got bass continuing on. So I just wanted to mention that we've got a few more weeks of bass, and very excited to continue with that. Very excited. Yeah, our guest tonight is Clark Wendlandt, the reigning Bassmaster Elite Angler of the Year, which is an incredible accomplishment. Kevin, you know what it's like to win this. And I think any pro will tell you that the Angler of the Year trophy is the toughest to win on any circuit because you have to be consistently good in every event. So, hey, Clark, welcome to College of Bass, man. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thank you guys for having me.
Hey, I just wanted to say congratulations. I know you've won on the FLW circuit in the past, but this is your first on the Elite circuit. So I just wanted to congratulate you. What was it about 2020 that made it your year?
I don't know. I've been asked that question a lot. A little bit of it, I think, had to do actually with COVID because, I know Kevin could echo this, but I had a lot of time to spend on the water. Basically, everything shut down from say end of February to June. And so for 4 months, I got to do what I love to do, and that's go fishing. And so, I think spending time on the water helps you all the time.
Kevin, do you agree?
No doubt about that. It's again, Clark, congratulations. So Clark and I go way back. I watched his kids grow up. My wife was, teaching his daughters dance, when we were back on tour in the beginning. She used to do that. So it's pretty cool. But I saw pretty early on, Clark, when you started, right there at the top. I mean, it started early in the season. I'm like, man, I hope Clark, I hope he wins Angler of the Year this year, because it's what it takes. I guess I call you an old guy too, because we've been around so long, but experience definitely pays off on those tough events. You can draw from previous experience, and that's the whole thing about winning Angler of the Year is it's about having really good events when you have the opportunity, but it's about not having really bad events too. It's managing those tougher tournaments into a 25th place finish, or when you're sitting in 60th place after the first day, just moving back up the leaderboard, making the cut and gaining those valuable points, because you can't have a 90th place finish and expect to win Angler of the Year anymore. No,
you're exactly right. And I mean, I did have a bad one, but I think you're right. I mean, you actually have been the most consistent of all time, and I would look to you. I mean, the thing about it is you got to catch them each and every tournament. You basically just can't do bad. And you're right. When you have that chance to, have a great event, then you've got to capitalize on that one too. Every point really counts. Every fish counts. And that's pretty amazing when you think about a full year.
Yep. So, hey, tonight we brought up kind of junk fishing, because we knew that that's really kind of what you had to do last year. I mean, the diversity from the different lakes that you fished at the different times of the year, you have to be. So junk fishing is part being versatile, and then it's part having confidence in the ability to know when to do those. So, I mean, kind of break down some of the things that you did throughout the year and some of your key baits and techniques that really allowed you to win the title.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think what you do when you're junk fishing, I mean, junk fishing is kind of misnomered a little bit. I mean, because really we're always junk fishing to an extent. Instead of like pure pattern fishing, we're basically just taking whatever opportunity comes to us at any point in time. And so like you're going along and you're fishing a crankbait on a bank and you see a laydown, you're taking the opportunity. You pick up the rod that you've got rigged up for that situation. You make 3-4 flips. If you don't catch one, you continue down the bank doing whatever you were doing. Or if you see something, some bait flick or something happen, you're ready to change at any time. And, for me, there's a few baits that I've always got rigged. And I know everybody's the same. They've always got some baits rigged. I've always got a Strike King Ocho on the deck at any time, because, I mean, a wacky worm, when you're throwing an Ocho like that, you can catch a key fish at any time. Strike King Thunder Cricket's another one, and then a 1.5, KVD 1.5. I mean, those baits are baits that I've always got rigged. I always fish. I've always got on the deck. And, as well as I do, you just got to take advantage of those opportunities when they come.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, and that's a big part of it too, is being prepared, not just with, with your baits, but having all your equipment in tip-top shape. You're having the right size line to maximize the technique, and your hook sharp, and just, you can't miss a one quality opportunity and expect to have a chance to make up for that. The anglers today are just so good that you have to capitalize. And that's what, when it falls your way. And I don't believe in luck at all in fishing. And what I call, luck is really good fortune or bad fortune. The difference is you fishing down the bank and you hook a 4-pounder and you go to swing him in the boat and he gets off midair and he bounces off the side of the boat. That's bad luck. But if he bounces in, it's good luck. But it was not luck that got him to bite in the first place, to give you that opportunity. And, sometimes, you might feel pretty lucky about catching a good one, but you still were there. You had the right bait, the right presentation. And, I just don't believe in luck at all. And that's a big misconception by, I think, the non-fishermen, is they think, just catching fish is just luck. They're either biting or they're not. Well, they're always biting. You just got to know how to make them bite.
That's right. That's exactly right, Kevin. And what's so interesting about it, when you talk about, having all those rods rigged. It's interesting to me how many more rods that we have on the deck as anglers now than like maybe when you and I started, say 20 years ago. I mean, I think about it. There was a jig, a crankbait, a spinnerbait, and you may have had some variations of those. You might have had a, worm, and, you had 6, 8, 10 baits rigged. Now, when you get to a tournament, you got 25 baits that might work for you, and probably 15 or 20 that you got confidence that might catch a fish. And so tackle management is so much more important now than it seems like it used to be.
Yeah, I would tell you that that's one thing that I pride myself in. It's something that I learned from my wife, is like, you got to be organized, and obviously Plano sponsors this. They do a great job with all their tackle systems. And I think the foundation of every bass fisherman out there is a 3700 series box. We've all had jillions of them, but now with these new edge boxes, I know you've got them too. They just got the perfect thing for every type of lure that you have in your box. And like you said, we didn't have all those. We didn't have swim baits and thunder crickets, and we got so many more tools to use that do similar things. And it's all about confidence and kind of splitting hairs to be what's exactly right. But having your stuff organized and having what you need, knowing exactly where it's at and being able to get to it quickly is the difference in another 100 casts at the end of the day. And all it takes is one, and that's so many times, man. I have caught one on my last cast or my last stop, where you just never know. And I give it 110% from start to finish. And I've fished around you plenty of times. I know that you're the same way, man. You burn to win and hate to lose.
Yeah. I mean, everybody that does well in tournaments is extremely, extremely competitive. As far as that organizational piece, though, one other thing that I'll add on that is, it's not only does your boat need to be organized and your truck need to be organized with all the gear you carry, your house has got to be organized, or garage, or wherever your tackle room is, because, when you come back from a tournament, you're making changes. A lot of times I'll just take those edge boxes. I'll have one that I might be taking on a trip, get home, I might pull that one out, put another one in. And so it's just being organized to where you can get to that stuff. It's hugely key.
Yep. Yeah. You can see I've got my tackle room right here. I got a bunch of my stuff just pegged, so I can see exactly that, what I've got, how many of each color. If I get low, I know what I need to get more of, or whatever like that. And that's the same thing. I use a lot of the big XXL stowaways, and then the sportsman's trunks in my truck to put volume, to put big smaller 3700s in and extra baits and things like that. And it is, and you got it, right where it's at. It's all about time efficiency, because our days are a tournament competition day. What a lot of people don't realize is, mine are minimum 18 hours, every single day. And it's a grind when you do it back-to-back tournaments. You go 14 days straight of that. It's you've got to be in tip-top shape, and you got to be on your game all the time.
Hey, I got a question for both. I got a question for both of you before we got to let Clark go. What's the difference between junk fishing shallow and junk fishing offshore? I mean, what do you carry in either boat if you're fishing offshore structure versus the bank?
Kevin, you take it first.
Well, the biggest thing when you're offshore is a lot of times you kind of know that you're on a good piece of structure, or that with our electronics now that you can see the fish that are there. And so in having a whole, bunch of rods rigged to throw, to show them different looks, everything. So like ledge fishing at Kentucky Lake in the summer, I'm going to have a 6XD as my primary bait. I can cover a ton of water with it. It's a great bait to not only be efficient with, but it's a great bait to trigger strikes. But also I'm going to have a football jig, a big worm, a big sexy spoon on there, too, a hair jig, a big giant spinner bait, a big swim bait. You're going to have all those things. And I'm going to go through that whole rotation, because just like a bed fish, a fish on a bed, each one's an individual at times. And I've seen it. It's like, well, hey, just because they bit a crankbait on this spot doesn't mean they'll bite it on the next one. You might have to, rip a big spinner bait in front of their face, or the next one, it's a spoon. And if you know where they're at, it's worth taking the time to junk it up and show them a little bit of everything.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I mean, on deep fishing, it's really not much different than shallow fishing. On deep fishing, you've just got different tools. Like Kevin said, you're going to have deep diving crankbaits instead of maybe a 1.5, or you've got, a football jig instead of a jig that you might flip around cover. And so, it's really about the same. It's just looking for those little windows, those little opportunities where you can get a bite, maybe catch an extra fish. That's kind of what junk fishing is all about.
That's awesome. Hey,
Amen.
Clark, we're running out of time. I really want to thank you and congratulate you again for Angler of the Year, and look forward to watching you in the upcoming season as you go forward. So thanks for joining us on College of Bass tonight.
Well, thank you, guys, and I look forward to doing it again sometime.
You bet. Good luck, Clark.
See you later.
All right, take care.
Hey, Kevin, I wanted to move on to Lipless Cranks. Lipless Cranks. I know you're a huge fan. You've won a ton of money on them. You got them sitting right behind you. Said
Got some right there, man.
But doesn't it seem you don't hear about them very often on the tournament circuits? They don't seem to get a lot of love. Why is that?
Well, it's really a timing thing. And again, we have so many tools in our tackle box.
Yeah.
I think in the early spring when lipless crankbaits really have dominated in the past, now guys are throwing bladed jigs and swim baits that, when the A-rig came out, that changed the wintertime, early spring bite for sure. It allowed, people to throw something that's really efficient, that you can cover a ton of water with, and that catches a lot of big fish with too. So it kind of went by the wayside a little bit, but it's still, it's still a mainstay bait, and there's just nothing like it. Just like I said, right now at home with the ice coming off the lakes and these shallower grass lakes, it's the first bait to pick up. I mean, you can cover a ton of water with it. And that's what where you want to use it is where it's the most efficient. So, it's not a efficient bait to fish 20 foot of water with. I mean, I love to throw them on ledges in the summer and things like that, but it's when I already know where the fish are at, or I'm on a key spot. Where if you're just covering flats and things like that, that's where a lipless crankbait is so good. From 3 to 8 foot of water, it's an unbelievable bait. Then you add grass in the mix, and you let that bait get in the grass and rip it out. And people think you just cast them out and wind them in, but it's not. You fish it. I mean, it's like saying, hey, the best way to fish a worm is just to cast it out and reel it in. I mean, with a speed worm or something like that, maybe so, but with a lipless bait, you got to fish it. You got to let it hit the bottom. You got to rip it out of the grass. You got to let it tick the rocks. You got to let it ricochet off a stump. It's a great bait.
The baits themselves have come a long way. I mean, the rattle traps were around for years, are great fish catchers, but I think baits today have really gone to the next level in terms of, on the fall, they got that shimmy coming down. They don't tangle on the way down. You can ride them fast. They're not going to burn out on you and things like that. So they really are better than they've ever been. Yeah.
So, obviously with technology, the design process has gotten a lot better. And when I won the classic on a red eye shad, it was, really the only lipless bait that had that, that shimmy when it falls and kept that balance. And now, I mean, there's a ton of copies out there, and people have figured out that, hey, you don't want it to flip over. If you rip it up and let it fall, you don't want the hooks to tangle in your line or anything like that. So it's just, it's a new version of the old blade baits, from back in the day, the silver buddy type baits, and they run good. They imitate bait fish and crawfish really well, and they're just so efficient in that depth zone. And there's a lot more to fishing them, and it's about controlling the depth of them. It's it's rod, reel, line, hooks, and everything for me to make that real efficient.
Let's start. I know you consider this a year-round bait. So how do you fish these in the spring versus, say, later in the year?
So in the spring, it's definitely looking for those staging areas where the fish are first moving up. And again, up in our northern waters, they get up on the flats, get in the grass, you can get in the old dead pad stems and things like that. And just keeping that bait, just kicking along the moss or getting it in the grass and ripping it out and then letting it flutter down is a great way to fish it. The colder the water, the slower I like to fish it. I like to use it on pretty heavy line early to help me slow the fall down of it and help control the bait. So I usually throw it on 17-pound fluorocarbon right out the gate, like I will be in the next day here. And, a half-ounce red eye shad on 17-pound is something I can really control. It fishes great in, 3 to 7 foot of water. And I'm going to let it get down in the grass and then pull it free and then let that bait flutter back down. And that's when they're going to bite it. So you don't let it fall with a dead slack line. and you don't want your line too tight either. Otherwise it kills that action on it. So it's something you have to learn, but I try to fish it with the rod to the side and just kind of pull and stop, that way I can keep that, it's just like fishing a jig, but I want to keep that bait, that as deep as I can in the water. I want to keep it closer to the bottom. I want it ticking the bottom. So hold my rod tip lower to the water when I'm doing it just keeps that line better. And if you do got to get deeper, you can go to lighter line. The difference between that 17 pound and say 10 pound is 2 or 3 feet of running depth with the same retrieve. So it really makes a difference. If you're fishing a lake that has deeper grass, you can do that. And I typically have a couple of different crankit rods. I've got my own signature rods that are composite rods. I'm a huge believer in that. I change out all the hooks to number 2 KVD Mustad triple grips on my red eye shads. I think I sent you some pictures of some of the red eye shads, different colors and things like that, but they've all got those oversized hooks on them. And, people know that, these baits are notorious for losing fish, but I almost don't lose anything with these. There's one of my 3,700 deep edge boxes for my 3/4 ounce red eyes there. And, I carry a lot of different colors, but I run those hooks on all of them. I like that composite rod. It allows the fish to get the bait a little bit deeper. I get the best of both worlds, having the sensitivity of graphite to feel, if there's a tiny little piece of grass on the rear hook, I can feel the difference in the wiggle still, but that composite, having that glass in there just allows that bait to deflect off the cover differently. And when one bites it, it's more of a shock absorber and lets them get it a little bit better. And, it's my system and it just really works well for me.
For lake commandos, we do a lot of multi-species fishing, and I found that the rattle baits are extremely versatile, but they're also great on multi-species. So if there's somebody out there looking to catch like walleye, bass, stripers, wipers, this is the type of bait that you can go to. The other thing I found, Kevin, we did a show on Lake Athens years back, and I believe you've been on there multiple times. We found fish in 17, 18 inches of water, and we were catching them on rattle baits, a little 1/4 ounce. I noticed your tackle box said 3/4 ounce. So talk a little bit about when do you go 1/4 ounce, when do you go 1/2 ounce, when do you go 3/4 ounce?
Yeah, the smaller profile, like the 1/4 ounce red eye shad is a go-to early in the spring, especially in real shallow lakes when the fish get up there in the dirt. And I've caught giant bass at Lake Gunnersville in old dead pad stems in 18 inches of water, just like you're talking about.
That's where we were fishing. Yep.
1/4 ounce red eye, and a lot of people would now just throw a bladed jig in that same spot, but that 1/4 ounce red eye is fantastic. It's about depth for one thing, but it's also, having that subtler profile in real cold water. There's no doubt that a little smaller profile is better. Day in, day out, the 1/2 ounce size is my favorite. The standard red eye shad with the loud BBs is really good, but we also make a silent model, and then we make the tungsten 2-tap. And I really like that one. That one has that knocker. It's like a kicker in it. And it's a little heavier too. And that's one of the things I like about it is it does fish, even though it's a 1/2 ounce, or we call it a 1/2 ounce, it's a little bit heavier. It fishes deeper, than the rattling version. And it's a little different sound, no doubt if you got a spot, and the fish stack up this time of year, and a lot of our lakes up here, when you find them, you'll get into a bunch of them in a hurry, and throwing a different sounding lipless bait, throwing a different red eye shad, a tungsten 2-tap or a silent one to a standard one is just unbelievable to keep, fish biting. They definitely are intrigued with different sounds. Day in, day out, you can't beat the standard rattling version. It's the tight wiggle. It's the sonic waves that bait puts off, and that sound that draws them to it. I mean, I think it's just mesmerizing to them because they got it all the way down their throat, in that early season. And then as summer goes on, it's a different type of bite, but it does imitate shad so well. It imitates bluegill, and it's so efficient for covering those zones that it's something that I've got tied on, or if I've got shallower flats to cover, or shallow points, things like that, flat bays in the backs of creeks in the fall when the bass start just following pods of bait around, they're not relating to cover. There's not a better bait than a red eye shad in my tackle box.
Are you throwing it always exclusively on fluorocarbon?
I do. I know some people in real heavy grass like to throw it on smaller diameter braid. And I think for certain people that really might help them keep it clean. But, my system is fluorocarbon with that, composite, rod that I've got. If I do got heavy grass, I will go to, a heavier action. I'll go to a medium heavy that just gives me more backbone to clear it. But man, I don't have any problem, even in pretty heavy grass with, milfoil or with slime and stuff on it with 17-pound, fluoro. I use the Bass Pro XPS fluoro, and it's low stretch to begin with. And it just kind of gives me the best of both worlds, because that fluorocarbon sinks. It does help keep the bait deeper in the water column, compared to mono, for instance. So, but there's no doubt that I know people that have been successful with braid. I've tried it, and I just pull it away from too many fish and catch too many of them just on the tip of the lip and lose them. So my system is, the rod, the reel, the line, the gear ratio on the reel. I don't want to use in the cold water. I still use a 6:2-to-1 for 25 inches a turn to help me control that bait and force me to slow down. I know a lot of people like a little faster reel than that. Once the water gets warm in the summer, I like a high speed reel. I want, they like a faster retrieve then.
A 7-1
early season, man, the biggest mistake that most people make with a red eye shad early in the year is they fish it too fast. You want to fish it slow. You want to keep it down in the bottom, keep it going up and down, yo-yo, and let it do its thing. All you got to do to see the power of a red eye shad is just drop it over the side and watch it shimmy to the bottom. It's the way it falls that really triggers the bass.
It's interesting. One of the first times I fished competitively with a rattle bait was an early version of the Berkeley bait, the War Pig. Is the bites were so aggressive that with a soft rod and a slower reel, I was fishing a 6:4-to-1 late fall on a composite rod, and I lost the first 3 or 4 fish, and I finally figured out I couldn't catch up to them as aggressive as they were to get good hook sets, because they were running to the bait and running to the boat. Have you run into that very often?
Yeah, you can at certain times of the year. The thing, and this being a northern angler yourself, that in the spring, 50-degree water in the spring is a lot colder than 50-degree water in the fall. The fish's activity level is a lot higher. When you're going from warm to cold, it's just different. And, I see the same thing with a bladed jig, is that you can't use a super slow retrieve. That they just inherently a lot of time swim up behind it, inhale it, and keep coming towards you. And you need a fast reel to keep up to them, especially smallmouth. So, again, my cold water system is not a slow reel, but it's 25 inches per crank. And I'm not afraid to wind pretty fast if I need to, but it just helps me slow down. A lot of probably the majority of bass anglers like something, like a 7.5-to-1, a reel that's going to be 29 or 30 inches per crank. And that's why I don't like to use gear ratios, because gear ratios don't tell how fast a reel is. It's the size of the spool with the gear ratio that tells you how much line you're going to bring in. So the how many inches per turn is a much better judge for me to tell you how fast to reel a bait or how slow to reel a bait. So that's why, I really, I like that, that's the stats really of most reel companies now, is give you the inches per turn, because they're all different. It's all about the size of the spool with that gear ratio.
So you mentioned 50 degrees is different in the fall than it is in the spring, but 50 degrees is different in the north versus the south as well, because I've run into ice out fish chasing rattle baits to your rod tip in 40, 42 degree water. It blew me away the first time that happened, but I've seen it so many times.
Yeah. So it's really interesting. Just like, I caught some bass in my pond this week when it was half covered in ice. I threw a Ned rig out to the lip of the ice, pulled it off, and it sank to the bottom, and they're like, boop. The water temperature down deeper is a lot warmer than people realize too. But, in the shallow waters, what happens when the ice goes off is that water temperature makes a immediate jump from, 34 on the surface to almost, like you say, like 39 to 40 degrees. And the radiant sunshine, if you get sunshine, it warms up the bottom, the rocks, the weeds, the vegetation, and those fish get a lot more active in that colder water. Water temperature, or looking at your water temperature gauge, is a big mistake too in judging how active or inactive the fish are. It's a good I like to use it to find areas that are warmer than others, but I don't let it really get in my head about how active the fish are going to be, because they do. Our northern fish in 40-degree water absolutely choke a red-eye shad.
Yeah, it's amazing. Hey, so we talked a little bit about casting, a little bit about yo-yoing. If you had any other tips on yo-yoing, tell us a little bit more about the technique and when do you turn to it?
Yeah, so where it's really underutilized and something that I really like to do is the summer months, when the fish get offshore, especially on lakes that are river run lakes that have power generation. The Tennessee River is a great example. Coosa River, the bass love, they're focused on shad. And a lot of times they'll be suspended, especially some of these spotted bass lakes like that. They may be 10 feet down over 25 foot of water. And a lipless bait is another one of those baits that's very efficient to fish through the mid-depth zone. You can count it down to a certain zone and then, pull and drop it, through that particular zone. If they're on the bottom, and I've seen that a lot of times at Kentucky Lake and that, where you're catching them on a 6XD and it's 18 or 20 foot deep, where you can take that 3/4 ounce tungsten 2-tap red-eye shad, cast it out there, put it on light line so it sinks a little faster. I'll put it on 10-pound line and fish it just like a jig, or like you would stroke a jig. Just rip it up and then let it flutter down. And boy, they hammer it. It's like almost like you would with the big spoon. And it's just a unique bait, something different. It's a different profile, different sound, different look, has a lot of vibration, and it's a great way to do it. But it takes a little practice to learn that depth control. You count it down to 20 feet, you see how long it takes to hit the bottom. So then if you want to fish it in between, it's like every cast, you got to stay focused and know that, hey, that's, I counted it down to 15 feet, or I counted it down to 17 feet if they're up off the bottom. And I see that a lot with especially spotted bass. That's really important.
What's interesting too on yo-yoing is holding that line pressure or your rod pressure as that bait's falling. There's a huge difference between just letting it fall and letting it fall on a semi-slack line. And that's one of those things that can make a huge difference. I know it's been a difference for me.
Yeah, it does take, it does take a little bit of practice. And I think, a lot of people, I've been using a composite rod for throwing these baits for so long that I've really got it, kind of down. But for a lot of people, you probably want to throw the same rod you'd throw a jig on, but do downsize that line for that open water, deep fishing. Put it on 10-pound fluoro. It just gives your sink rate, it gives you a lot faster sink rate. And that's a big part of triggering them too, is just having it fall a little faster.
By the way, this winter I had an underwater camera underneath a fish house, and it was interesting to walk in there, have the house barren of fish underneath the house. I'd use a Berkeley war pig, obviously, but I'd drop it to the bottom, rip it up there, and all of a sudden a perch would filter in, then the bluegills. And it was really interesting to watch them respond to a bait like this. Hey, one other thing before we move on is color selection, clear water versus dark waters. What are your favorite colors in dark? What are your favorite colors in clear?
Well, a lot of it is matching the natural forage for sure. Without a doubt in the spring that crawfish patterns rule. Even here in the natural lakes around me, like that watermelon craw, that's a really, really good early season color. So we're matching bluegill and crawfish early season in these natural lakes. You see the red one there, that's legendary in the South. And I mean, people from Lake Guntersville all the way to Sam Rayburn or Falcon Lake, they're throwing red lipless baits early season. And there's no doubt that there's crawfish are red in those zones. And it's a great dirty water color too. But I catch a ton on chartreuse in dirty water, or even like that chartreuse sexy shad. Gold is one of my favorites. I won the classic on that gold sexy shad there on the far left. And, in Florida, that's my go-to colors too. And that tannic water gold is really good. A lot of these northern fisheries get a lot of tannic tint to them, or that root beer color, and gold is a great color. Gold and bluegill colors like that, chartreuse, really good in any of those tannin places. But really just try to think of what's going to be the key forage for the time of the year and the system you're fishing, and match it. In the summer months, I really don't throw hardly anything but the chromes and the like sexy shad, the shad patterns on those lakes that shad are the primary forage. Where up here in Michigan, I don't really throw anything but bluegill, because they eat in the summer. Bluegill are what the bass eat. And it's still a great bait for covering a lot of these grass flats. And shallower drops and things like that we have. So many natural lakes have here where I live.
So a question's come up a couple times here. Do you believe in red hooks on positioning them on crankbaits for any reason?
I've spent a lot of time trying them, and I think there's definitely, something to that, especially in clear water. I've seen it make a difference on top water and a jerk bait where it's super clear water. I'll put that red hook for that front hook on there and do it. I mean, that's why I made Mustad. I said, you got to come out with a red KVD triple grip as well. And they did, but day in, day out, I think they're more focused on that bait. I'm not hung up on it. I know there's a few guys that really, really get hung up on it. It's just like having a feather on your top water. There's times when it is a huge, huge difference maker, but on that red hook, I couldn't say without 1,000% of a doubt that you got to have red hooks on everything,
Yeah, great. Hey, let's move on. We want to get to some viewer questions. One of the things that you mentioned last week about fishing frogs is you loved flipping it or pitching them around docks and things. And we had a question from John Creek. He wanted if you could expand on your skipping techniques in terms of fishing docks.
Well, there's no doubt that having the right rod and reel setup is a huge deal. I worked with Andy Montgomery this year with Luz to come out with a skipping reel, and it is a game changer. It's got a shallower spool. It's got a skipping zone in the break, and it's a reel that, you really can't you mess it up. The downfall of it only holds 40 yards of line. But if you're skipping, you're never going to be fishing for the 40 yards from the boat. And when I say 40 yards, it's 40 yards of 20-pound or 40 yards of 50-pound braid. And, I throw it on my own signature series. It's a 7.2 medium heavy action. It's a rod that I think is the perfect length and tip to be able to skip a bait, whether it's a jig or a frog. And I like to skip both, there's no doubt. Set yourself up for success though, and pick something that's got a good design and put a big bulky trailer on there when you're practicing. That's going to be more buoyant, when you're going to, and what I tell people is start out easy. Don't try to skip 40 yards your first cast. Just try to learn to get that nice overhand roll cast and keep that bait low to the water and do it at 15 or 20 feet, nice and easy. Don't really even try to skip, just that underhand pitch. And then it's just an extension of speed that up and keeping it smooth. It's really easy to learn. And there's no doubt, I said it in an interview with this new reel is like, I was pretty good at skipping before this new reel, but with that particular setup, I'm a magician. It truly is a difference maker.
So rod length, that does depend on height. How tall are you?
Yeah. I am 6'2", so I do get away with a little longer rod because I like to skip at a distance. You got to have a little bit longer rod. If you're real tight to places, you may want to go down to a 6'10", but for sure a 6'10" to a 7'2" is the right length. And you need something that's got a lot of backbone, but still has a little bit of flexibility, a little bit of flexible in the tip. And you want a graphite rod for it. There's no doubt you want one that really responds quick. I do not like skipping. I like to throw a Thunder Cricket on a composite rod, but if I'm skipping boat docks with it, I'm going to put it on a graphite rod. My control is so much better and my precision is so much better with that graphite rod. So, okay. My rod that I use for it is a GC5. It's called, and that's the model in my KVD line. And I designed that one for skipping a jig and a frog, and it's something that I do a lot. And Andy Montgomery's got several of them out. He uses a 7.1. Okay, so we're pretty much in agreement that you want about a 7 foot, a 7.1, 7.2 rod to be really good at skipping.
Okay. We had a young angler, Tristan Beck, who asked a number of questions last week. And he said, with the growing popularity in bass fishing, how has it affected you when fishing major tournaments?
Well, it's definitely a factor because, having all these people following you around when you go from spot to spot, and a lot of them are out there just to cheer you on, but there's plenty of them too that are there to want to learn your spots, especially when you weigh in a big bag the day before and things like that. And it adds a lot of extra pressure, a lot of extra noise on the water, a lot of extra boat wakes. If you're going skipping boat docks and, 20 boats are following you, the waves are crashing into the shore for 15 minutes after you stop, it makes it pretty hard. So it's a challenge, but it's it's a good thing that I have as many fans as I do when I'm fishing. You know, I mean, that's why I have the sponsors that I do. And, you know, like I say, I love teaching people how to catch more fish. I like it when people are interested. It's a positive thing. Just like our show, you know, the main reason that we do this is just to help people be more successful on the water. I'm telling you everything that I know, and, you know, what I've learned through, you know, 30 plus years of tournament fishing to try to help you be a more successful angler. And, you know, if it affects my performance every now and then, just because there's a lot of people that want to see how I do things, you know, that's what I've built myself. So I've got no reason to make excuses for that.
So you guys heard it right from Kevin that he's dishing it all. So go to Plain Old Fishing's YouTube channel and check out the past episodes. It's pretty cool. Hey, we're already getting tight on time. We got a couple more questions. Matt Ortloff has a question. He says, do you ever use weighted frog hooks to keep them from rolling over?
Yeah, I have. I try not to, because it typically makes you have to reel the same frog a little bit faster to keep it on top. You know, the design of our soft plastic frogs has gotten a lot better, you know, from that standpoint too. But there is, you know, the double hooks have become very popular for frog hooks. You know, they call them toad toters and things like that. Mustad makes a really good one with a screw lock on the front for it, and it does not come with a weight. But you can take what I do, because I don't like to add as much weight as most of them have. But I go to the Bass Pro Shops to go to the fly shop, and you can buy that real small lead wire that you can just wrap around there and just break off and put exactly the right amount. Whether, you know, it's perfect for wacky rigs, it's really good for swim bait, you know, hook, things like that.
Jerk baits.
Soft plastic jerk baits, anything like that. You can just add the right exact amount and, you know, snip off the rest, and it stays locked on there really well. And that way you can add just enough weight to get it balanced. So that's what I would really recommend.
That's awesome. Hey, a couple other questions. One asked, would you ever support a sonar only tournament?
A sonar only tournament.
That's one of the questions come in. So I assume no mapping, or maybe none of the forward looking. I don't know what.
Yeah, but you know, when I first started, we didn't have GPS. You know, that's how I'm dating myself. Is I remember when Loran C was the only thing, and it wouldn't even get you close. And GPS wasn't very accurate in the beginning either. And it changed offshore fishing, and then mapping too. So if you want to see how much you rely on that map, just go out there without one time to a lake and go, man, I just can't believe, you know, it just helps you understand everything around you. So, I mean, like I said before, technology is unbelievable. It's in every part of our life. You know, there's nobody out there that can get by without having, you know, one of these in their hands. And it's the same on a boat, you know, to not have, especially as a competitor, to not have every bit of technology. You know, I mean, I've got, you know, 4 graphs. I'm going to have 5 graphs on my boat. You know, I've got a hydro wave up on the front. I've got Raptors on the back. You know, I mean, you just have all these tools to help you control the boat, keep you, you know, in position, to help you find the fish, to help you break down the lake, you know, the mapping, all of it. It's unbelievable. You know, how are you going to go to a lake like Toledo Bend that's 150,000 acres and break it down in 2 days or 3 days of fishing without using some technology? It's just, you're not going to be successful.
You know, I got to believe that mapping is probably the biggest technological advance in fishing in our era. Agreed?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, this is right now, this is the greatest time. What's changed in the last 5 years is amazing with how good the mapping's got, how good side imaging's got, how good down imaging is. You know, the Mega 360, all the forward facing sonars and things like that. It's all critical, you know, shallow water anchors, all of it is just, it's just made it so much more efficient. And as a tournament angler, I'm out there, you know, beating the clock, but the weekend angler is the same. You know, you only got a limited amount of time to fish. So you want to be successful. So having those tools, you know, I'm never going to make excuses for having the right equipment, you know, and it doesn't matter if you're if you're a professional golfer, you don't have 4 clubs in your bag. You have every club that you can. You got a laser rangefinder to measure the distance on the course. You should, you're crazy not to take advantage of it if you can, I think. And I get that some people say, well, I don't want to invest in that. And that's fine, but I watched the same thing in kayak fishing. A lot of people got into it because, hey, it doesn't cost a lot to get on the water. But boy, before you know it, you got
sonar, you got this,
finders on it, and all your equipment. And it's the same thing. So it keeps me out of trouble. So I love it. I love the technology.
I had a quote from Ron Litter years back. He says he wants to catch every fish in the lake. And at the time he said it, I thought, but I realized I think I do too, and you probably do as well. Hey, we're running out of time. We got a great information tonight. We've got a strong show scheduled for next Wednesday. We've got a special guest, Plano Pro Brian Latimer is going to be on board, and we're going to really go deep into electronics. I know that's a subject matter that you're very passionate about, and based on the number of questions that we've had for the last several weeks, so it'll be fun to get into that with you.
Yeah, no doubt. I think electronics are the 2 questions that in my career I've always gotten the most on is like, how do you break down a new lake, or how do you find fish quickly? And, what's your system for that? And then it's electronics questions. And now, there's so much technology out there, and there's so much to look at. And what's unbelievable is all of this advancement that we've had out there has made really good electronics affordable. I mean, now for $500, you can buy a unit that, 5 years ago, it just is so much better. It's just so much better with great mapping and GPS, super accurate GPS, and great side imaging and all that. I mean, it's just, there's some unbelievable deals. Just like we were talking about the Spring Fishing Classic at Bass Pro, they've got tons of deals on electronics. So if you're looking for a new depth finder, now's a great time to go to Bass Pro or Cabela's. You can look online and see, but it is just what's available is awesome. And we're gonna talk a lot about that next week, and should be a really good show. It's gonna go really fast, I'll guarantee you.
Kevin, it's already got an hour. I mean, I'm like, it seems like we opened up here about 5 minutes ago. It's amazing. Hey, we got to pick our winner before we go tonight, and our winner is Juan Maldonado he's from Smith Station, Alabama. So we'd like to congratulate Juan on winning it tonight. And then just one other reminder too is go out and go to Plano.com and purchase your mug and support the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame. It's
every day.
Yeah, you'll use it every day. I know you will. Kevin, thanks for the time tonight. Great information, great show. And everybody join us next week on Wednesday. Same time, 8 p.m. Central.
Yeah, we only got 2 more shows. So
I know, it's incredible.
Yeah, that last show. So we get a ton of questions. That last show, I know we talked about. We're gonna try to go through and do a rapid fire answer a ton of the questions we've gotten from the previous weeks, and we're gonna have a lot of fun. So I know we got Edwin Evers lined up for that last show too. We're gonna be actually at Sam Rayburn during the Bass Pro Tour event that same week. So that'll be interesting. So hopefully we're catching a lot of big fish, but it should be a fun couple of weeks we got coming up.
That'd be awesome. Good night, everybody, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for watching The College of Bass. Join us for an all-new episode every Wednesday night.